You open your banking app without really thinking about it. Not because you need to move money. Not because there's a problem. Not because something went wrong. You just check. The screen loads. The number sits there. Fine. Not exciting. Not alarming. Not the kind of number that demands action. You take it in for a second. Then you close the app. A few minutes pass. You pick up your phone again. You open the same app. You look at the same number. Nothing has changed. And yet, something feels slightly off. Not panic. Not stress. Just a faint, almost unnameable sense that this number should mean more than it does. Like you expected a feeling to arrive with it, relief, confidence, progress, and it didn't. You don't dwell on it. You're not worried. You move on with your day. But the question lingers quietly in the background. Why do I keep checking this? There's no urgency in the moment. No drama. No financial emergency hiding beneath the surface. Just a habit. A reflex. A small pause where you look for reassurance. And don't quite find it. You're not disappointed. You're not upset. It's subtler than that. It's the strange realization that you've been doing everything right, or at least nothing obviously wrong. And yet this simple act keeps repeating itself. Open. Check. Close. Almost like you're waiting for permission to feel settled. And that's the part that feels uncomfortable. Not because something is broken, but because nothing is. Everything looks stable. Everything looks under control. So why does this moment keep happening? Why does this number, steady, reasonable, fine, still leave you with the sense that you're not done looking? This isn't a warning. It's not a problem to solve. It's just a quiet moment that feels a little too familiar. And once you notice it, it's hard to unnotice. From the outside, your life looks exactly the way it's supposed to. You're responsible. You pay your bills on time. You don't ignore emails or let things pile up until they explode. Money isn't chaotic for you. There's a system, maybe simple, maybe unspoken, but it works. Rent or mortgage gets handled. Utilities come and go without drama. You save. Not perfectly, not obsessively, but consistently enough that you know you're doing what you're supposed to do. Nothing is on fire. If something unexpected happens, you deal with it. You adjust. You move things around. You figure it out. You've learned how to be steady. And there's a quiet pride in that, even if you don't talk about it much. You know how many people don't have this level of control. You know how easily things can fall apart. But yours don't. You show up. You handle your responsibilities. You make reasonable decisions. You're not reckless. You're not careless. You're not waiting for a miracle to save you. In fact, you've probably been described by others or by yourself as good with money. Not flashy. Not extreme. Just solid. And because of that, no one worries about you. No one checks in to see if you're okay financially. No one gives you advice you didn't ask for. You don't give them a reason to. Even when you think about money, it's usually calm, measured, practical. You don't spiral. You don't catastrophize. You've learned how to stay composed around it. And that's important because it means this story isn't about failure. It isn't about bad habits. It isn't about not trying hard enough. It isn't about some obvious mistake you're making. This is about someone who's functioning. Someone whose life moves forward. Someone who handles things. Someone who looks stable and mostly feels that way too. You might even be doing better than you used to. Earning more. Saving more. Living with fewer worries than before. On paper, it adds up. And that's why what comes next is hard to explain. Because when everything looks fine, when you're doing what you were told would work, when there's no crisis forcing reflection, you don't expect to feel stuck. Yet somehow, quietly, without breaking anything, that's exactly where you are. At some point, saving stopped being something you did, and quietly became something you measured yourself by. It didn't happen all at once. There was no decision, no announcement. You just noticed that the number mattered more than it used to. At first, saving was practical. A buffer. A way to make sure one bad month didn't turn into a bad year. Felt neutral. Useful. Calm. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, it took on a different weight. Saving started to feel like proof. Proof that you were safe. Proof that you were responsible. Proof that you were doing adulthood correctly. When the balance went up, you felt steady. When it didn't, something tightened, not panic, just awareness. You didn't talk about it. You didn't label it. But you started checking more often. Not because you needed to, because seeing the number reassured you, told you that you were okay, that you were still in control, that nothing bad was about to happen. And without realizing it, saving stopped being a tool in the background of your life and moved quietly to the center. You didn't think, this is my goal now. You just felt a subtle relief when the number grew, and a subtle discomfort when it didn't. You began to notice your behavior shift in small ways. You delayed things not because you couldn't afford them, but because not spending felt safer. You felt a quiet satisfaction saying no, even when no one was asking. You felt responsible for maintaining that sense of stability, even if you couldn't explain what would happen if you didn't. Saving wasn't about a future anymore. It was about maintaining a feeling in the present. And that feeling became familiar, comforting, grounding, reliable. You didn't notice when the original purpose faded. You didn't stop to ask what the savings were for. You just knew that having them made you feel like you were doing something right, like you were ahead, like you were protected, like you were being the kind of person who doesn't mess things up. And because it looked healthy, because saving is supposed to be good, nothing about this raised alarms. No one warns you when a good habit quietly changes roles. No one points out the moment when a safety net starts feeling like the destination. So you kept going, saving, checking, feeling steady. And somewhere in that calm, responsible rhythm, something shifted. Not loudly enough to interrupt your life, but softly enough to reshape it. You didn't lose control. You didn't make a mistake. You just didn't notice when being safe became more important than moving forward. And that realization, if you let it sit for a moment, doesn't feel dramatic. It just feels slightly uncomfortable. Like recognizing a room you've been in for a long time and suddenly noticing how small it actually is. Nothing dramatic changes. There's no moment where you decide to live differently. No announcement. No turning point. Your life just smooths out. Small things become easier, and because they're easy, you stop questioning them. You choose convenience more often, not because you're careless, but because you're busy. The quicker option, the familiar option, the one that fits neatly into your day, feels earned, reasonable. You're still saving. That part doesn't stop. Money still moves into the account you told yourself matters. The number still grows, slowly, steadily, responsibly. So nothing feels wrong. But alongside that, something else begins to move. Your standards adjust. What once felt like a treat starts to feel normal. What once required a pause now barely registers. You don't remember deciding this. You just notice that your life costs a little more to maintain than it used to. The coffee that used to be occasional becomes routine. The subscription you added for a month quietly renews. The upgrade makes sense. It saves time, reduces friction, feels aligned with the life you're building. Each choice on its own is harmless, justifiable, logical. And because you're still saving, you don't feel the need to look too closely. That's the part no one talks about. Saving doesn't stop spending from drifting. It just makes the drift quieter. You tell yourself you're balanced, responsible, doing both. And technically, you are. But intention slowly gives way to default. You stop asking, do I want this? And start assuming, this is just how things are now. Your lifestyle adapts upward in small, polite increments. Nothing extravagant, nothing reckless, just enough to keep your present comfortable and your future abstract. You still feel careful. You still feel disciplined. But the gap between what you earn and what your life quietly absorbs doesn't close. It stabilizes. And because it stabilizes, it disappears from conscious thought. You don't feel stuck yet. You just feel steady. That's what makes this part invisible. Saving continues to give you a sense of safety. Spending continues to give you a sense of ease. Between the two, a quiet equilibrium forms. Not growth, not decline, maintenance. And maintenance feels responsible, especially to someone like you. You didn't choose stagnation. You didn't opt out of progress. You simply adapted, again and again, to the pace of your life, to the expectations around you, to the version of normal that arrived without asking. When you look back, it doesn't feel like a series of decisions. It feels like something that happened to you while you were busy doing everything right. And that's the unsettling part. Because nothing here deserves blame. There's no mistake to correct. Just a realization forming quietly in the background. You've been saving, but you've also been drifting. And the two have been happening at the same time, so smoothly that you never felt the need to stop and notice. At some point, you notice that improvements stop landing the way you expected them to. Not in a dramatic way, more like they pass through you. A raise comes. Not a huge one, just enough to register as progress. You acknowledge it. You adjust. You keep going. But the feeling you thought would arrive with it never really does. There's no sense of expansion. No deep exhale. No quiet, okay, this helped. Life feels exactly the same. Your savings grow. Slowly. Reliably. The number looks healthier than it used to. Intellectually that this should matter. You tell yourself it does. But emotionally, nothing shifts. You still hesitate before certain plans. You still feel that small pause when something unexpected comes up. Not fear, just awareness. The kind that says, this is manageable, but not light. You're not stressed. You're not struggling. You're fine. And that's the strange part. Fine starts to feel like a ceiling. The safety is there. The structure is there. The proof that you're doing the right things is there. But relief never quite shows up. It's as if your life is well insulated, protected from disaster, but also sealed. Nothing leaks in. Nothing really opens up. You don't feel poor. You don't feel reckless. You feel contained. You begin to realize that every improvement you make simply restores balance. It doesn't create space. The raise absorbs the drift. The savings buffer the uncertainty. The discipline maintains stability. Everything works. And yet, nothing feels better. You start to sense the difference between being safe and being free. Safe means things don't fall apart. Safe means you can handle what comes up. Free feels like something else entirely. Free feels like movement, like choice without calculation, like ease that doesn't require constant monitoring. And you don't have that. Not because you did something wrong, but because the system you're in is designed to maintain, not expand. So you exist in this quiet middle state. No urgency, no collapse, just effort without arrival, progress without lift. The days pass smoothly, the months pass responsibly, and when you try to explain the feeling, even to yourself, there's no clear language for it. Because nothing is broken. That's what makes it heavy. You're safe, but not free. And that realization doesn't hit like fear. It settles like weight, a calm discomfort, a sense that something meaningful is missing, even though everything is technically present. You don't know what to do with that yet, so you carry it quietly. You keep showing up. You keep saving. You keep functioning. But now there's a background awareness you can't quite turn off. If this is what doing well feels like, why doesn't it feel like more? A quiet thought appears while you're doing something ordinary. Making coffee, scrolling through your phone, tidying your desk. It isn't dramatic. There's no alarm, no red flags. It's just a sentence that sits in your head and doesn't go away. I don't actually know what enough feels like. You repeat it silently, like testing it. Saying it out loud wouldn't change anything. And in that repetition, a strange clarity settles in. Not panic, not guilt, not urgency, just recognition. You notice how much you've been following rules without naming them. How carefully you've been managing, measuring, and adjusting, always forward, always correct. Yet never asking yourself what enough actually is. No spreadsheets, no calculators, no budget hacks, none of the tools you've trusted. Just observation. It feels surprisingly freeing. Because suddenly, the loop that's been humming in the background is visible. You can see it without judgment. The careful choices, the small sacrifices, the incremental adjustments that were meant to secure you, but never asked if you felt secure. It's a moment of stillness where the mind unclenches. You realize you don't have to act. You don't have to fix anything immediately. The pressure lifts quietly. You allow the thought to exist. You feel it settle beside you, like a gentle companion rather than a warning. And in that quiet, a new mental space opens. A space where observation comes before action, where awareness comes before instruction. This isn't about urgency or crisis. It's a pause, a breath, a recognition that you've been moving correctly, yet unknowingly trapped in subtle patterns. And naming it, even silently, even to yourself, brings relief. You realize that this awareness, calm and still, is enough for now. For the first time in a long time, you can simply notice. Not judge, not plan, not stress, just see. And in that seeing, the edges of the loop become visible. You can spot where it bends, where it shifts, without needing to correct it immediately. It's a small, quiet freedom. Nothing has changed in the numbers. Nothing has changed in your routines. But something has shifted internally. And that shift, the awareness without panic, is the beginning of clarity. It lands slowly, almost imperceptibly. The realization that this isn't a problem with you. You're capable. You're adaptive. You follow the rules. You show up. You save. You manage. You adjust without complaint. And that's exactly why the loop works on you. It's designed for people who do the right things quietly and consistently. People who absorb small changes without noticing. People who normalize incremental lifestyle shifts. People who earn, save, and feel responsible. The same traits that make you reliable are the traits that let this subtle pattern take hold. You see it clearly now. This isn't about laziness, recklessness, or a lack of effort. It isn't about mistakes you made or shortcuts you skipped. It's about identity. Saving became proof, not a tool. Proof that you're safe, proof that you're responsible. It became part of who you are. And because it's identity, it feels natural to keep doing it. To keep following the rules. To keep adjusting. The very habits that define you, diligence, careful planning, awareness, are the ones that make this loop nearly invisible. You can recognize it now without shame. You're not broken. You haven't failed. You're not missing some secret or hidden trick. You're simply human. And for people like you, the system is subtle, cumulative, and perfectly aligned with the way you live. The moment you name it, identity trap, a sense of relief settles in. Not because the loop disappears. Not because there's a fix ready. But because recognition replaces confusion. Clarity replaces self-doubt. You can step back and see the pattern without blame. Without judgment. And in seeing it, you realize something important. The trap isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence of your capability. It's proof that you can adapt, that you can absorb, that you can manage. And that very proof, when left unchecked, quietly keeps you circling, just as it was always meant to. Control isn't about adding more rules. It's not another spreadsheet, another goal, another target to hit. It's not forcing yourself to save more, or to cut back harder, or to chase some imagined security. Control is quieter than that. It's noticing, seeing the patterns you're part of without judgment. It's feeling the space between what you do automatically and what actually moves you. It's understanding that just because you've been saving, planning, and managing doesn't mean you're automatically free or stuck. It just means you're present in the system you've been living inside. And that presence is enough. Enough to pause. Enough to recognize. Enough to breathe without urgency. Control is not a rigid structure. It's the soft awareness that you have choices, even within routines that feel fixed. It's knowing the difference between doing something because it's automatic and doing something because it aligns with where you actually want to go. That awareness quietly shifts everything. It doesn't create a sudden leap forward. It doesn't force a dramatic breakthrough. It simply lets you see the loop for what it is, and gives you the calm certainty that you can step differently if you choose. This is control. Not through discipline. Not through deprivation. But through quiet, unshaken attention. And for the first time, it feels lighter than everything you've heard about taking control before. Control doesn't demand a plan. You don't need a list of rules, a strict budget, or some radical overhaul. Instead, there's just noticing. You see a habit, the little coffee you grab on the way to work, the automatic click on a subscription renewal, and for the first time you pause. You realize you can choose differently, or you can leave it. Either is fine. It's not urgency. It's quiet recognition. Each day you notice a little more, The small conveniences, the habitual spends, the routines that shaped your baseline. You don't react with guilt or push yourself to change. You simply observe. And in that space, something shifts. Breathing becomes easier. Choices feel lighter. You're aware that the loop exists, but you're not trapped by it. You understand that progress doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be subtle, almost invisible, yet real. The sense of agency returns slowly, gently, like the tide pulling back from the shore. And in that return, you feel calm, grounded, human. You can breathe again. You can move forward softly, deliberately, without force. You sit back, noticing the quiet weight you've been carrying all along. No alarms, no deadlines, no dramatic call to action. Just the mirror you've been looking for without realizing it. Everything you've seen, the habits, the drift, the loop itself, isn't a failing. It's not a mistake. It's recognition. You feel it settle softly. Someone finally put words to the way you've been living. There's a strange comfort in that. A shared understanding. You can breathe. You can pause. You can acknowledge the pattern without shame or urgency. And in that pause, the loop doesn't control you anymore, not fully. You simply see it. Reflect for a moment. Notice the quiet drift in your own life. Share this with someone who's living inside the same loop silently. Subscribe, not for motivation, not for a checklist, but for recognition. Because sometimes being seen